Hello everyone, Michael here for Tactica Imperialis. Welcome to today's video. Today it's going to be Tau Hobby Update Episode 7. I've got a lot of hobby to show you. So I've been doing a lot of work on my Tau since the last hobby update that you saw, although to be honest, I've kind of done all of it since Christmas. In what I've come to term the mad week of hobby, I cranked out a lot of stuff, and I really want to show all of it off to you so you can see what I've added to the army, how it's all coming together, and then we're going to have a discussion regarding where the list is going to go. Because when I did the video and I showed off the 8, and I'm going to show you the 8 again because there's something I want to show you with them. We talked about where I thought the list was going to go, but I've had a few more thoughts, a little bit more all in. I've talked about it on the podcast before, so you may be aware of some of this, but I've got a plan and I want to run it past you and see what you think. So I won't waste any more time on intros. If you have any thoughts on the army and how it's going, then let me know in the comments and all of that stuff with the paint scheme and the build and all that stuff. I'm sure you'll probably want to watch the video first. So, all that out of the way, I hope you enjoy the models. Let's have a look at them. So, kicking off the mad week of hobby is an XV86 Coldstar battlesuit. Now, the Mad Week of Hobby is actually in day 11 right now and shows absolutely no signs of abating. I'm still going, but the Mad Week of Hobby was just a nice little term I came up with. So, this was the first model I painted, and this is Chassel Cordella. She is a name you might actually recognise from my character's 40k story, my 40k stories character's lore. Yeah, this is her. So, she's just got a Coldstar battlesuit, no conversion or anything. Actually, there is a small conversion, but well, it's not even actually it's not a conversion at all. So it's an out-of-the-box Coldstar battlesuit on a flying base. I wanted to make this battlesuit like it was flying rather than actually be on the ground because it's a Coldstar battlesuit. It's supposed to be in the air, and I wanted to have one battlesuit that was on a flying base, so it made sense for it to be this one. The only change from the stock Coldstar is, well, it's on an actual flying base, and also the guns are the other way around. So on the GW model, the burst cannon is over here, and the missile pod is up here. So I put the burst cannon down here, and it's a ball joint rather than a slot in, and the missile pod's up here. Other than that, it's a very standard paint scheme, nothing too special. This is the first time I've done a commander in blue, because obviously all my other commanders have been the 8, so I went a little bit to town with the reds and the whites, and there's a fair bit of detail. Let's see if I can just tip her back a bit. Yeah, that actually is a little better. So yeah, standard paint scheme. There's a fair bit of red. I've actually made it symmetric. I didn't intend to make it symmetric, but I have actually made it... No, I haven't. It's not symmetric. It's very nearly symmetric, but it looks symmetric just at this angle that I'm looking at it at. And then I've given her a shield generator, which I put a Farsight Enclaves model, thank you, a Farsight Enclaves transfer onto. I admit it looks a bit small and dinky when I look at it now, but it is what it is. And then on the back, standard stuff. Yeah, the jetpacks are not straight, which is surprising because the way that commander jetpacks work is you have these extra components here, and then these slot into them. But I haven't managed to make it go square. I guess I just must have let go or hold it at a wonky angle. But for once, I actually got the legs on the right way around. If you remember when we did Aracon, I actually put the legs on the wrong way around. I got them right this time. And I've got her just sort of like diving in. I'm probably going to... I'm not rushing my way through these models, but I've got a lot to get through. I don't want to make this video like an hour long. So there's not much more to say on her in terms of her model, other than the helm, which is part red, part white. So if you think about Chasse Vruz, like my Ghost Keel, that has a red helmet, and the Chasseaux, which are the 8, have the white helmets. And she's a Chassel, so she's got a red helmet with white highlights. She's working her way up, and she'll get a white helmet if she becomes a Chasseau. Little touch, I thought it was kind of neat. And that's about it for her. The other thing that's interesting for her is her backstory. Really, she doesn't have a full backstory yet, like all the lore behind her. What you know of her is basically what my character told you in the 40k Stories video. She was named by the Gevesa, and her name, I actually talked it out with one of my friends from uni who's a language student, and Cordella means daughter of the, or something very similar, means daughter of the sea in Latin. And I thought, oh, that's a nice touch, and I stuck with it. and it is really nice. And I'll just turn us sideways. Yeah, I did the side fins in blue. Don't ask me why I did the side fins in blue. I just thought it would be appropriate because I normally put things that go on top of jetpacks that aren't guns in blue. And the shield generator is slightly darker, so like if you remember the 8, they've quite got orange on their shields, but she's got red. Small little details, and actually not too difficult to paint. I painted her pretty much in a single day. I had her in a few sub-assemblies, like the head was a sub-assembly, each jetpack was a sub-assembly, the missile pod was a separate one, the shield was separate, that shoulder pad was separate, that gun was off, but I think the entire actual body was just one big assembly, because you can actually get quite a bit of work done on the stuff, which is really, really nice. So that's my Coldstar, and now we're going to move on to the 8, because you're going to see it on a lot of models throughout this video, but I want to do it on the 8 first, because it then saves me talking about it exclusively afterwards. So, let's have another look at the 8. So, here you have 4 of the 8. Shavastos, Oblotai, Brightsword, and of course Farsight, who's at the back. And what you'll notice about them immediately is that they're based. I have started basing the army in what has become quite a large undertaking. So I've based, up to this point, the entirety of the 8, all of my crisis suits, all of my stealth suits, and I am just about to base my ghost keel. I've also based my fireblade, I think that's everything, and yeah, so the 8, crisis, stealth, and broadside, yeah, that's everything that's based so far. I am basing a little bit more, but that's going to be a long-running project. And the main reason I got round to doing this is I was basing Farsight first. I based Farsight first, and I had this planned out, I think from a while ago. I'd actually planned out what I was going to do. So this basing system is very, very simple. If I Brightsword, out of the way, please. So we have Agrilan Earth and Terminatus Stone. That's it. That's all this basing scheme is. You paint on the Agrilan Earth, which is one of the newer texture paints, and then you dry brush it with Terminatus Stone after it's dried, and it's supposed to create this salt flats, ash waste type of thing. Now, the one thing I couldn't quite get right was how to get all the cracks. So you can see like on a few bases that there's this dusty texture and there's maybe a few cracks in things, but I'm not very good at it because the way GW told it to me is you've got to build up layers and layers and layers to make it crack, and then you can dry brush. But I, 1, didn't have the time, 2, didn't have the patience, and 3, probably didn't have the skill to get all those layers to build up and crack individually. So I've just done 1 layer as I've gone along. Now the 8, I actually did the 8 first, but anyway, I'll go back to the story. So I was basing Farsight, and I did his base with a bunch of sprue pieces. Those little sprue pieces stuck down, and then a thing from the commander kit that I wasn't using on the Coldstar to put on his base. I slightly overdid the white, as you can see, and then I based Arakon, who I haven't got down here, but it's basically the same idea, just a bit bigger, and with a couple of spares on it. And then I wanted to base Ovesa. But I was like, I want more than just like little bits of rock on Ovesa's base, so what am I going to do? Ovesa is my Riptide for those who don't keep up with the lore. And so I went out and I bought the Sector Imperialis large base detail kit from GW. 20 quid, one of the best investments I've ever made. You get 4 full sprues, and those 4 sprues are absolutely loaded with stuff. So you can just see on these guys here, you've got little stones, barrels, grates. Is Bright still getting things back? No. You've got little vents on the back of Oblotais. You've got little Imperial symbols on Shavastos. You've got proper barrels instead of crates, lampposts, flagstones, like iconography, all sorts of things that are just in this box, and there's loads of them. And you can even get some little pieces like lights and bits of doors and all sorts of stuff, really. And I think it's a really, really awesome kit. And I've just been basing the 8 in my battlesuits with them ever since. I have finished my last battlesuit, so you'll see him a little bit later, and I might bring the other crisis suits down just to show you. But yeah, I've based them just like this. My other broadside is based. The stealth suits, I'll be showing you a second team of stealth suits in this video, and I'll be talking about why I've got a second team of stealth suits in a bit. But one of them is based in the new style with the new stuff, but the old stealth team that you'd seen before, the Chasvre has rocks on his base, like Farsight does, but the other 2 are completely flat based. They've got nothing extra on their base. But that's fine, nothing major to talk about with them. But yeah, I just want to let you know that the army's based now, or is on the way to being based, and I thought I'd use the 8 to show it off. So, moving on from the basing, we're not really going to touch on it that much anymore. Let's have a look at some more new models. Next up, we have a TY7 Devilfish. This is actually a Christmas present off one of my friends, off of Ben, and it's very, very useful for reasons I'll be explaining a little bit more later. So, one Devilfish APC, very nice and simple. I've built it without its flying base. This is important. It's got its feet out. It's like a flipping Thunderbird. It's got its feet out. I don't like flying bases at all. My Piranha broke its flying base and is still unable to use a flying base, so I wish that had feet. Drones are a nuisance and the Coldstar is a one-off. All of my Devilfish are going to be like this. All of my tanks are going to be like this if I get more tanks. That is the end of the debate. So, a Devilfish comes with a burst cannon and 2 gun drones, which actually inspired me to paint some more drones. I actually got 3 or 4 more gun drones done as a result of doing those drones, so I was just getting them done in one go. So, this is a very, very simple scheme. If you saw the Piranha a long time ago, you probably recognise it. You've got the red engines, a little bit of a red panel on here, and then the rest of it's basically blue with a few red bits. And then we've got the doors. Now, the doors are basically done in red. The underbelly is basically just blue and silver. And then at the back, we have another door, which is done in red. It's very, very basic. And to be honest, it's a very, very easy thing to build. I actually built this thing in one go. The only things I left as sub-assemblies was this hatch, the drones, obviously, and the engines. I don't think anything else was a sub-assembly as far as I remember. Now, what's so good about the engines, you might just hear some sound distortion, is, yeah, the engines twist and they come off. This means you can actually easily denote if your vehicle is immobilized, which is kind of handy, and you can also denote, if it's like in a certain position. So if you wanted it to be flying and have it like banking at an angle, you can do that, and it will make it easier to transport as well, because it's now going to have a much narrower frontage to like back in and put things in around it. The reason you leave this hatch as a sub-assembly, which I have, I'm not going to paint the inside, but yeah, that's what that looks like. I thought about putting a transfer on it, changed my mind. The reason you want to do that is this thing. This is a recon drone. At the end of the video, I'm doing a build guide. Oops. Sorry, I caught my cable and it's knocking my bloody camera over, sorry. So yeah, I'm doing a build guide later, and this wasn't actually finished. I've literally finished this about half an hour ago. And this has a burst cannon, and it goes with Pathfinder teams. But it has a special rule called turret mounting, which allows it to go in a Devilfish. Now, why you want to do that is it gives the vehicle a positional relay and a homing beacon, which, if you know anything about my army, is absolutely beautiful, because it means that I can choose that board edge for outflankers, and it means I can not scatter near it for deep strikers. And I'm going to be adding another optimized Pathfinder team, so I can get another recon drone and another Devilfish, and I'm going to be using that tactic quite heavily in future, mainly for the homing beacon, but also for the positional relay in the larger build, which we'll talk about a little bit later. And that's all there is to say on the Devilfish. I'm going to be getting a bunch of these things, probably at least 4. One in the optimized Pathfinder team, because it's basically a half-price Pathfinder team, and then a couple of extras to transport my Fire Warriors around if I don't want to play a static game and I want to play Rush, or if I want a Counter-Strike Cadre, which of course I do. And again, they're really very simple. There's not a lot to say about them. Like, it's almost entirely blue. There's a bit of silver, a bit of red, a little bit of white. I did the visor. Originally I did it in rust grey, but then I turned it to white instead. Small change, nothing major. And then you've got the oranges, the ice blue, Lothern blue edges, and the glaze. It's a really, really simple model. If you put the time into it and just get past that first base coat, it's actually really, really easy. And honestly, if you want to play Tau vehicles, they're so easy to paint and build. Like, they're not a hassle at all to build. I built this in like an hour and a bit, completely. Built it in like an hour and a bit, in the middle of, I guess, revision procrastination. But yeah, very, very easy little kit, and glad to hear it, because I'm going to be needing, as I say, at least 4 of them. And if I go for Hammerheads or Sky Rays, then it's the same chassis, so it makes sense that they're nice and easy. But of course, we've got a lot more to get through, so let's have a look at some of the crisis suits. Yeah, we've got one more crisis suit to show you that I finished, so let's have a look at that. And now we have the XV8 Brigade. These are all of my non-8 crisis suits, and aren't they lovely? Especially when they're all fully based. So this is the new guy, who you haven't seen before. This is the other new guy. I don't actually think I showed him off. I think I did him after I did the 8. So like those three at the back are all old. So you can just buzz off. But you two I think are both new. I don't think you've actually seen this guy. So this guy is probably my favourite of these 5. You actually have seen him in battle reports, but you haven't seen him here. So he's basically like all the other crisis suits, just a lot better. Took everything I learned from the 8 and actually applied it here. So I've got edge highlighting on the jetpacks, much neater edging on here. Got a little bit of white detailing, a little bit of leg armour, and I've left shoulder pads off for the main reason that it makes attaching weapons far, far easier. So for example, like on this guy, there's certain things that probably will not go on that arm, and also on this arm, things like shield generators particularly can be a little bit of a nuisance. He's based with this Sector Imperialis stuff. This is like a cracked piece of masonry. I've done a similar thing on my blue broadside, if you're wondering. And then this is the other guy. I wanted a crisis suit that was looking to his left instead of his right, because as you can see, we've got a bit of a preponderance for crisis suits who look right. So, if I just, yeah, you can see. So he's got a little bit of cracked masonry as well on his base, and he's done really, really simply. Once you get into a routine, battle suits are ludicrously easy to paint. Crisis suits probably take longer for me to pose and then assemble than they do to paint, because particularly if I've got a new box crisis suit, I've got all the options in the world. I spend ages debating like, oh, what pose do I want them to be in, and it takes a flipping age. But like actually painting them does not feel like a chore or a challenge in itself at all. Also, this guy's kind of like a chasseur, so you can see he's got the red markings. I don't actually know why I put red markings on him, but I did. He's got red markings, so like I've got another chasseur ready to go. Although to be honest, he's probably my preferred chasseur. He broke. He lost one of his fusion blasts, but that's fine. I was kind of hoping that would happen anyway. So he's got one fusion blast, and now I can put an actual gun on that arm that I want. And then these guys are all based with just some general stuff. So you've got like these grates, these vents, these barrels. I talked about this a little earlier when I did the 8, but yeah, there's a little bit more examples of the things you can do. And the rim of the base is just Steel Legion drab, same brown I always use. I've had to do it in 2 coats, mainly because it gets on the stuff there and I have to dry brush back over it. I've actually bought one of the Citadel dry brushes just to make my life easier while I was doing this. It's actually really good for washing as well, because it's just a little bit fatter than the other brushes, and it's not as fat as my like massive brush, so it's good for doing bases and washes. It's actually really helpful. So that's everything there. As far as how I do like the basing details, the stonework is rust grey with a wash of Agrax Earthshade and a wash of Nuln Oil, and then it's literally just dry brush over with the Terminator stone. The masonry here, there's some Retributor armor and some is it called Ironbreaker? Is it Ironbreaker? My silver paint? Hang on a minute. No, that's not it. Ironbreaker? Yeah, Ironbreaker. And I've got Caliban green on some of the greener things, and the barrel is Macragge blue, Abaddon black, and then Retributor armor. It's the same gold I use on my Thousand Suns, for the record. And that's really, really simple, and it just putting that extra wash on actually blends, oh sorry, not the wash, the dry brush actually blends them in really nicely. They actually really look like they belong on this world. So you can sort of imagine like a desert waste world, and there's like Imperial outposts, or maybe a sandstorm through a city, or something like that. You can imagine that it would work. Obviously, if it was Tau basing, then I would absolutely use Tau basing, but they haven't really got sept detail basing kits. If they did, it would be lovely, but it's mostly Imperial, and is there maybe some Chaos basing? I don't know. No, I think it's almost all Imperial. I probably could have got some of the hero bases, but they're too small for battle suits, so the only one who would benefit from it was Farsight, so I didn't see the need to bother. Anyway, how many more have we got left to do? We've got 2 new units to show off. and then I'm probably going to call it there, and then we'll do the build guide, and then we'll wrap up the episode, because I get the feeling this is going to get quite long if I ramble any longer. So, next unit. Next, and penultimately, we have a unit of XV-25 stealth suits, the second unit of these in the army. And I actually took advantage of the basing kit again. So as you can see, they're all stood on a piece of terrain. I particularly like the Chasseur, who stood on this barrel, but the other two are pretty nice as well. So, why did I get a second stealth team? Well, primarily, so I just adjust the lighting, it's for this. The homing beacon. Because crisis suits, farsight bomb, deep strike, homing beacon. I have my retaliation cadre built. That's all the crisis suits you've seen over the past few parts, and they all need somewhere to land. And it's much safer if I give them landing zones, particularly when you're dropping in 5 or more units. So yeah, it's 5 or 6 units in the retaliation cadre, depending on where you put the commander. So I really wanted to get another homing beacon. So these guys are basically there to infiltrate and set up landing zones. And I've got 2 teams now, and that's their job. They are going to be run in a separate combined arms detachment alongside my Coldstar and a couple of crisis suits as sort of infiltrating combined arms that will then drop in the 2 suits. The Coldstar will fly, and these guys will just stay alive, hunker down, and then kill stuff once the allies arrive. Now, as to the models, they're painted exactly the same way as my old stealth suits, if you remember those from like part 4 or 5. I know I do these updates so irregular, people probably don't really remember, so I'll go through them quite quickly. So here you see a stealth Chasseur, you've got the edge highlighting on the jetpack, which is done in red as usual. You've got the green underarm for the battlesuit, and then a black clothing. By the way, the Terminator Stone sometimes gets on the feet. You may have seen it on some of the battlesuits. It's not very clean, but I don't mind. It's like they're actually on the battlefield. It's on their armor, ever so slightly anyway, because they're just landing on it. And they've got black clothing, like their jumpsuit, and then they're inside the green battlesuit with the blue armor, the red jetpack, and the silver gun with some red and yellow details. Very nice and simple. This guy, same idea. You can see there's a red face mask. I could have done that in blue and then the Chasseurs in red, but then again, I find the Chasseurs really easy to find anyway, and they've got a slightly different eyepiece anyway to denote that. So that's that, and he's painted exactly the same way. I've just put the white banding on the shoulder pads on a different place, and that's literally the only difference, is the white's in a different place. And then the Chasseur, one of my favourite models from this set, apart from Cordella, because I love that model, the Coldstar. He's on a crate, and he's sort of signalling, he's hitting the big red button. He's like, now is the time to strike, let's do this. And he's got the extra red banding on his shoulder pad and down here. He's got the bonding knife, which is actually built in. You actually have to have the bonding knife. I don't mind that because I'm taking bonding knife ritual anyway. And he's got this extra little dome thingamajig on his jetpack, which is probably going to just help me denote where he is. And he's got a fusion blaster, just because I find it really useful to have fusion blasters in stealth teams, because that way they can infiltrate up, and if you want them to hit tanks, they can hit tanks, and if you want them to annoy heavy infantry, then they actually have something to worry about. They actually might have to make a light vehicle jink, or make a character look out sir onto somebody else who's important, because the fusion blaster I just find really, really useful, and it makes sense to be on the Chasseur because he's carrying the homing beacon, and I don't want to lose the homing beacon. The homing beacon isn't a thing you pay for the unit, you pay for it for the Chasseur, so he has to live. As I say, I could have done blue face mask and then his in red, but yeah, no reasons. The homing beacon, I'm probably not going to use this homing beacon as much, but you can see there's a couple of little details, there's a little skull, this little light that have been covered over by this dust. I prefer my other one, which I've just based normally, but I will use this one as my second homing beacon. I'll probably give it to my other stealth team. In fact, I'll just get the stealth Chasseur from the other team down, just so you can see him. So yeah, that's him. He's the other Chasseur. You can see the little bits of sprue that double up as rocks on his base. And yeah, so that's my stealth team number 2. And I've got one more model to do, and it is, I think, it's not the biggest model in my collection, but it's not far off. And closing out the mad week of hobby, we have an AX3 Razor Shark Strike Fighter. What, you thought the Aircast were going to leave it out? Nah, not a chance. Okay, this is the first flyer I've actually ever owned. I've played armies with flyers for ages. I ran orc flyers the odd time, but they were only ever proxy. And now I actually own a flyer and a flying monstrous creature in the form of the Coldstar, which is actually a new thing for me. And I really quite like this model. It's ridiculously easy to build, which is nice. The wings are very easy, the engine's very easy. It is a lot of sub-assemblies, so I think both engines were a sub-assembly, both these boosters were a sub-assembly. The gun was obviously a sub-assembly, the secondary gun under here is a sub-assembly. I think that was it. Oh, and under here you have like missiles. I've done that again. I apologise. And then under there you have rockets. I've glued that down just because it is such a nuisance, such a massive, massive nuisance that I just glued it down and said screw it. So this is the Razor Shark. Now the only problem I've got with it is this stuff. I don't know why this has happened. I assume that it's the varnish is just broken and just peeled off, though I don't know how it could have done, because aside from picking it up and putting it down again, I haven't done anything to it. Let me know in the comments how I might be able to fix that, other than actually using like matte varnish, because that sort of defeats the point. I'd have to basically do the matte varnish to do the gloss varnish again, so that would kind of defeat the point, but do let me know, because I don't really want to have to repaint it completely. So, you will probably recognise this paint scheme by now. It's the same scheme as the Piranha and the Devilfish that we saw actually earlier in this video. And it's very, very simple. There's a bit more red, but that's because like, a lot of the areas like make themselves open to being red. It's like these little edges and these edges and these edges and the engines, of course, and then the booster engines underneath. So if you build this as a Sunshark bomber, these things are your interceptor drones, but on the Razor Shark they're just engines. I'm trying to work out how to put this because it's not going to sit flat. And then you have the quad ion turret at the back here, which is actually quite easy to paint. I thought it was going to be an absolute massive nightmare. Hold still. I thought it was going to be a massive nightmare to do the quad ion turret. It actually wasn't. It's pretty nice, very simple, and it's still, it does swivel, I swear. It might just be that I'm not going to try. It does swivel, but that goes up and down, and there's a missile pod here, which again does supposedly swivel, because I haven't glued it, but I don't really trust it. If you're wondering why I haven't got its base, well, I have, but I haven't based it yet. It's the only thing in the 2,000 point Farsight bomb army that isn't based, so I'm just going to base it before I go and show any of that, but you'll see it when I do a battle report with the Razor Shark in future. Is there anything else to talk about? Easy to build, pretty easy to paint, did it very, very fast. The only like minor headache of like this assembly is a little bit awkward, and if you do try and do the Seeker missiles that go in here, that can be a bit of a pain. Oh, and I completely ballsed up the transfers, I'm aware of that. Like, that's supposed to be a transfer, but I broke it, so I had to paint in the gaps. This one broke. That's wonky. These aren't symmetric. I did a bad job with the transfers, but other than that, it's a Razor Shark, and it's very nice. And this actually rounds out my 2,000 point Farsight bomb. So why did I buy a flyer? Well, one, I've never owned one, like I said earlier, but also because I wanted to have the Farsight Decurion to run my Farsight bomb. So the Retaliation Carter is core, the contingent headquarters with Farsight is command, but I need an auxiliary, and aside from 16 drones, which is a bit of a commitment when you don't have that many drones to begin with, I decided to get the flyer and go with it that way because it's the cheapest alternate route. I mean, I will be running the Counter-Strike Cadre once I have more Devilfish, and I'm probably going to get the Allied Advanced Cadre, but we'll talk about that in the build guide, which is coming up right after this. And yeah, I think that's everything. So that is all of the models from the mad week and a half of hobby. I do hope you've enjoyed them. Let me know what you think of them in the comments below. And for those of you who are more tactically minded, we're going to be having a little bit of a discussion on where the army's got to, where it's going, and what the eventual build guide, I think, is going to be. So, enjoy. So, that's all of the models and basing that I've got done. As you can see, I've been very, 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 very busy. Odd that it's in the middle of exam period, no? whatever. Anyway, I just want to do a longish, this could get quite long discussion about where I think the army is going to go. So I'm going to get the build out of the way first, and sort of like where I want the build to go, and then we're going to talk about expanding the army to get there. So as it stands right now, our 2,000 point army is complete. I've got a couple of models left to base at the time of recording. In fact, I'm basing one of them right now. I'm recording this before I record the rest of the showcase, so some of the models you see finished I haven't actually done yet, but by the time you're watching this video, hopefully the entire 2,000 point army will be based. That 2,000 point army is a Dawnblade contingent and a combined arms detachment. So it's a retaliation cadre led by Arachon with 3 crisis teams, and Oblowtie leading the other broadsides, so 2 broadsides and the Riptide. We have Farsight and Bravestorm as a crisis bodyguard. In the headquarters, the retaliation cadre is core, and then we have our Razor Shark Strike Fighter as the auxiliary. We then have the combined arms detachment, which is the 2 stealth teams, the Coldstar, El Cordella, and then we have 2 basic crisis suits that are basically just there to make the army as small as possible, because the whole idea is it's an all-in-one deep strike gimmick list. That's the entire point. It is a Farsight bomb. It's the ultimate Farsight bomb. I will probably have discussed little things about this as I went through the build, but so basically how it's going to work is I'm going to infiltrate the 2 stealth teams, I'm going to deploy the Coldstar, and I may or may not deploy the 2 crisis suits that are on their own. And that's it. Nothing else will be deployed. Everything else will be in reserve. Because the retaliation cadre comes in on 2, all of it. That's its formation special rule. The Razor Shark has to go in reserve because it's a flyer, and Farsight, well, he kind of benefits from coming in anyway, and he basically has a built-in homing beacon, so he won't scatter if he comes in with his bodyguard. That's all the better. I'll only have to roll 2 dice, which is for the Razor Shark and for Farsight. The rest of them will come in automatically. And the whole idea is that the stealth suits stay alive, and then use the Shasta for his homing beacon to drop the suits in around them. And if they do die, well, I've got a flying monstrous creature, so that's going to save my bacon in terms of staying alive. It doesn't always work, because if you don't get first turn, you can't take off. You get one-shotted quite easily, so you have to keep your commander quite hidden. But she's actually quite good at shooting. I've used her a couple of times, and in the one time she actually got to do anything, she actually did some decent damage. We were playing Genestealer cults, and she did some really good damage. She wasn't flying because Genestealer cults have no anti-air. I was being nice, or being fair, to be honest. But I think she's got a lot of potential, and with the shield generator, she's got some survivability too, and I'd probably give her a stim injector in most games if I had the points. And that's the 2,000 point build, sprinkled to taste with weapons and support systems, but that's basically it. It's not a very big list. I have the entire 2,000 point list on display on my top shelf, which is where the 8 were last semester when I did the update for them. I haven't put the drones up there, but the entire 2,000 point army is up there, and so it's not a very big force. But where do we go next? This is the bit that's changed quite recently. So at 3,000 points, I have actually now written, I think I talked about it, I remember I was watching back my Alexis's rants and rambles she did with me, I actually talked about it there. We have a Counter-Strike cadre. That's what the Devilfish is for. I'm going to be getting the optimized Pathfinder team, and I'm going to be getting another Fire Warrior team. I'm getting that for cheap off someone who used to have like a Tau start collecting and doesn't want the Fire Warriors. So I'm going to get that, and I'm going to get a couple more Devilfish, and that's going to make a Counter-Strike cadre. So that's the 3 Fire Warrior teams and the Pathfinder team, all in Devilfish, that are all fast. And they can just rush up the board, and the Pathfinder team can have one of these. This is a recon drone. It's about 30 points. If I just try and get the gun out. Yeah, I haven't finished painting it at the time of recording. I might have done it by now. It's 30 points, but it comes with a homing beacon and a positional relay. What that means is that outflankers and deep strikers don't scatter. The outflankers can always come on that side, and deep strikers don't scatter, same as a homing beacon that the stealth suits have. And there's going to be 2 of them. One is going to be on the Pathfinder team that's in the Devilfish that's racing up the board, but I'm going to take a small, like 4 or 5 man Pathfinder team, attach that to my combined arms that's got the Coldstar and the stealth suits and the crisis suits in, and make that with a recon drone as well. That gives me a home base landing zone. Even if it all goes to pot, I have a home base landing zone that I can then defend. If it goes well, I have 3 recon drones up the board and 1 at the back. If it goes really badly, I have 1 at the back that I can still use, set up a line and start shooting, and then come forward and claim the board after that. The idea is, of course, it's about shock and awe, drop in, clear a space with a retaliation card and all that stuff. And the Counter-Strike card will allow me to do that. because I'm going to have a strike team with pulse rifles, a strike team with pulse carbines, what I'm going to do with my second team, my breacher team, and then a pathfinder team. And all of these are very good at clearing things out. Yes, they're not incredible, but they've all got decent range, apart from the breachers, but the breachers are going to be front and centre doing as much damage as possible. The Pulse Carbine team are going to work exactly the same as the Pathfinder team on that first turn. They're just going to, on the second turn probably, they'll just go out and they'll spray. They'll just clear out an objective. That's all they're there to do. The Pathfinders may or may not mark, but considering the Recon drone also has a burst cannon, if I disembark from the Devilfish, then I'm just going to use that. And then the Strike team with Pulse Rifles, they will probably be the most likely to stay home, but at the same time, getting them up the board, I can then just pull them back whenever I want to. And then to finish that off, I'm going to take the Ghost Keel. I might end up switching that Ghost Keel instead of having a Fusion Collider to have a Cyclic Ion Raker, because Cyclic Ion Rakers are actually quite good. I didn't actually work out how good they were compared to Fusion Colliders. So I'm probably going to switch it. I may have to buy a second Ghost Keel to do that, mainly for options, but also because, yeah, I don't know if I can rip that off. I'll try, but I'm not going to risk destroying the entire model just to get that gun off. I can also, if I don't want to run the Ghost Keel, I can heavily upgrade the Devilfishes to have point defense targeting relays, disruption pods, and sensor spines, which gives them move through cover, +1 to their cover saves, they have stealth, so they can jink on a 3-up. And I can give them Overwatch, so the gun drones and the burst cannon that the Devilfish has, assuming I don't disembark the gun drone, they become a unit anyway, can Overwatch, and that means that it's really helpful for defending the stealth teams. So let's say I just rush the two, let's say the breachers and the path and the breachers and the pulse carbines up to the stealth suits. If the stealth suits now get charged, well, I can now Overwatch, and that's really, really useful. And I can do that really useful if the pathfinders have to get out for whatever reason, maybe to cap an objective or to shoot at an objective. I can protect them if they get charged with their tank, and I don't have to like blob up. I want to have independent teams, and that's what I'm going to go for. And the Ghost Keel is there if I don't heavily upgrade. And that can just be a nice little nuisance. I'm not sure whether I'll drop that or keep that on the board, but given it's got a quite high fire rate and it's quite mobile, it's probably quite a big nuisance to keep on the board. And it's also something that means that they don't shoot at my Coldstar on turn 1 because they're so worried about hitting the Ghost Keel. And with the Holophoton countermeasures, I can definitely save myself from anything that's particularly nasty like deflamers. And then I had a thought. What if we flip this on its head and we try and integrate our infantry in a different way? Because in the main Tau Codex, if you don't run Farsight Enclaves, you can actually run the Infiltration Cadre. So what I'd do is I'd move the Counter-Strike Cadre, almost in its entirety, the 3 Fire Warrior teams particularly, into my Hunter Cadre, which would now be led by the Coldstar. The 2 Crisis Suits would go into the Retaliation Cadre and just tag on some of the teams in there. And the Ghost Keel would take up the Elite slot. The fast attack slot will be taken up by 5 Pathfinders, and the heavy slot, I'm working on converting some sniper drones. From spare drones that I've got, I'm going to use the pulse rifles from that Fire Warrior kit, and I'm going to make a 4 or 5 man team of sniper drones using the pilot from the Devilfish as the fireside marksman. It's a crazy idea, I know, but sniper drones are expensive, so I'm not going to do it that way. And that means that I have a Hunter Cadre, a Retaliation Cadre, and then I can move the Pathfinders and the Stealth team, the 2 of them, into an Infiltration Cadre. I would need 3 Pathfinder teams in there, so I'm going to have 5, 5, 5, and then a 5-man team to take up the slot in the Hunter Cadre. And then I have my Piranha, and that wraps up that slot. Which you wonder why the Piranha didn't go in there, that's because it's in here. Now, what that does is it gives me access to the Intervention Request Beacons, which is a rule that that formation has. If one of the models in that units in that formation dies, then all your reserves automatically come in on turn 2. But Michael, everything's coming in on turn 2 anyway, apart from, well, the Flyer and Farsight, who would have to go into an unbound detachment on his own at this moment in time. The Bodyguard can come back into the main teams. And I'd also be adding my Fireblade in, just as a point. Yes, you are correct. The Infiltration Cadre is not much use if I've got a Retaliation Cadre. So what I was thinking is, let's add some numbers to this force. Let's actually bulk it out a bit with the Allied Advance Cadre. That's 4 units of crew and 2 units of Vespid. That's going to be 40 crew and 10 Vespid. It's actually 8 Vespid, but you do it in squads. You buy them in 5, so you may as well take 5. And they all get Infiltrate. The crew have Infiltrate, but the Vespid get it. And they can also Deep Strike. So they get Outflank. Now what makes this really fun? Recon drones, positional relays, are actually really useful because they allow you to choose where you outflank. So if I send my two of my Pathfinder teams in Devilfishes with recon drones, bombing up the sides and infiltrate my stealth teams more centrally, then, well, I can just pick where my Groot want to come in and where my Vespid want to come in. Because I can drop the battle suits in the middle around the stealth team, or on the fringes if I need them, and then just bring in 40 Groot on the wings. The Piranha is basically there as a sacrifice. It's basically there to bomb up the board and get itself killed. It's going to put itself in the most compromising position it could possibly go into and get itself killed. Because that way, oh, intervention request beacons, oh dear. With scouting Devilfishes and just go bombing up the wings, then I can just outflank 40 crew. I don't even need to send them bombing up the wings, because if they're near that board edge, they can arrive near that board edge. I think that's how it works. I'm just going to get my Tau Codex and check that that's how it works. Highly professional YouTubing this. Positional relay. Positional relay. Stop singing, Michael. Positional relay. While the bearer is within 6 inches of a board edge, any friendly unit with the Tau Empire faction that arrives using outflank can choose that board edge. Outflanking units that do not choose arrive from that board edge arrive as normal. So you can still roll, but you can automatically pick a board edge. This does also include your opponent's board edge if you really want to be evil, but getting a positional relay up that high, that fast, is probably not going to work. Unless... Hang on, just give me a second. Vehicle battle systems. Does that include a positional relay? No, it doesn't. Okay. But yeah, so basically, I can set up 2 outflank zones for Groot and Vespid, or I could deep strike the Vespid. It's up to me. And I can deep strike the battle suits. All I have to do is get the Piranha killed, or get one of the Devilfishes killed, or get a 5-man Pathfinder team killed that's out on its own. Because I'm going to have a 5-man Pathfinder team at the back from my Hunter Cadre, and I'm going to have a 5-man team that's going to scout forward and theoretically get itself killed if the Piranha doesn't. Just take 2 tempting targets and kill them. Oh dear. You just hit the intervention request beacons. So now I've got a commander, 3 crisis teams, a broadside team, a riptide, 4 units of crew, and 2 units of Vespid, and a flyer, and potentially a ghost keel, and farsight, all coming in at once. This is the best thing. This is genuinely the best thing I have ever come up with. Now you may also be wondering to yourself, well, hang on, what about farsight? He's in an unbound. Well, this is the beautiful thing. Crew come in boxes of 16. So if you get 3 boxes of crew and 2 shapers, which are the sergeants, and you upgrade them. Oh yeah, you upgrade them, you don't add them in. No, you could do it. You could do it. Yeah, you then got 50 crew, and 2 of which are upgraded. That means you can get a 5th crew team. And that goes into an allied detachment with Farsight, HQ1 troop. That's an allied detachment, nice and easy. And then they can come in as well. I can set that crew team up as a sniper team if I want to, or I can set them to outflank as well. And Farsight can just be like, hi, bomb, and just drop in wherever he wants, and then rendezvous with one of the other teams with the jetpack move, and he can't do the jetpack move actually, but he can rendezvous with the teams later on, get himself safe, and yeah, hilarity ensues. Hilarity ensues. That is the entire thing, and that's about 4,000 points. So 4,000 points, we have the Coldstar, Fireblade, 3 Fire Warrior teams, strike with pulse rifles, strike with carbines, and then a breacher. We have then 5 crew squads. We have a ghost keel. We have 4 5-man Pathfinder teams, or basically 20 Pathfinders with 2 recon drones. We have our 2 stealth teams. We have our 2 broadsides. We have our 9 crisis suits, our Riptide, Commander Arakon. We have our Razor Shark. We have all of the stuff that I've talked about in this video. I think that actually uses every single model in my collection as well. Apart from maybe a few drones, I have used every model in my collection in making that 4,000 point list, assuming I go and buy 3 boxes of Groot and 2 boxes of Vespid, and I need to buy 2 Devilfish and the optimized Pathfinder team, and I need to get another Fire Warrior team, but I've already got that arranged to get for cheap. So that's where we're going. That's the plan. And then at 5,000 points, well, who the heck knows? Like I just look, obviously I'm not using Farsight Enclaves at this point, I'm actually going back to the main Tau Codex, but the main Tau Codex still is pretty damn good. And I'll still pay for bonding knives and play it like a Farsight Enclaves detachment, which is the only way that I think is fair. And what else could I run? The Armored Interdiction Cadre, that's kind of fun. Firebase Support Cadre, that's kind of fun. I could probably just bulk out the Hunter Cadre. I mean, I've got room for more stuff, more piranhas, hammerheads. I mean, I'm never going to run Storm Surge. Before people ask, I will never, ever, ever run a Storm Surge. For a couple of reasons. One, I think the Storm Surge is god ugly. Like, the only good Storm Surge is the one that's actually carrying its gun. Like, the conversions you see carrying their guns, they're the only good Storm Surges. And two, I find them a bit ludicrous. I just don't like them. They're not a battle suit anyway, so I would probably never use them. But yes, that is the army build planned up to 4,000 points. Give or take. Obviously, you've got to sprinkle in upgrades and all that stuff to make it work. You probably have to spam a few upgrades, but I could do it. So, there you go. I hope you've enjoyed the models, and I hope that this build idea was a little bit interesting to you. So, thank you all for watching, and let me know what you think of everything in the comments below. My name is Michael for Tactica Imperialis, and I'll see you all again. Goodbye.